Crystalynn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. Just could you introduce yourself to everyone and let them know who you are?
Yes, so I'm Crystalynn Shelton. I'm a licensed CPA, and I have been working in the accounting field for over 20 plus years. I also am an educator, so I've been teaching at UCLA Extension for the last 12 years, and my focus has primarily been bookkeeping and accounting and QuickBooks, of course. I have my own consulting business where I work with small business owners to teach them how to properly manage their books. And so that is like my favorite thing to do is just work with all different types of businesses and learn about them and then just help them understand the importance of keeping their books and how to properly do it, especially those who are kind of bootstrapping it and don't really have the budget to hire somebody. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know a lot of them are listening right now. So I'm curious though, because you're a licensed CPA just like me, and I'm always preaching the idea that there are a bajillion flavors of CPAs.
Absolutely.
What got you interested in this corner of the CPA world, and where did you fall in love with sort of the core accounting side?
Yeah, I would say, I was working in corporate for about 8 years. I started to get burnt out, and it was just primarily because there was so many hours I was working, like 70-hour weeks. And one of the things I was tasked with at one of the jobs I had was learning how to convert our existing accounting system, bring our old accounting system over to a new accounting system. And in doing that, because I managed the accounting department, I was responsible for creating training materials and actually teaching the staff how to do their jobs in the new system. So I tell people I kind of got bit by the training bug by being responsible for that. And it made me just want to leave the corporate world and actually work with smaller companies, pretty much doing the same thing, teaching and training them how to do the books. And so I also really became good at understanding that people who don't have an accounting and bookkeeping background typically were intimidated by doing bookkeeping because a lot of people use, the accounting jargon and all these complicated terms that are just like, what are you talking about? So I sort of mastered just kind of explaining things in really simple, easy to understand language and then providing like real world examples so people can actually connect the dots.
Yep, you're speaking my language. You guys know that's what we're all about here. We say that we're the jargon and judgment free zone.
Exactly.
And what got you into, so this is what's funny is that I meet so many accountants, CPAs, EAs, right? All the different alphabet soup of what we
Alphabets, exactly.
Right. But, and it's so funny. I get this all the time too, where it's like, you actually have a personality. You actually seem really nice to talk to. You actually seem to want to teach people. What motivated you to get into accounting in general, or maybe before that corporate job? What made you go for the CPA? Because that's a big decision and a big commitment. So I'm always interested to know a good accountant origin story.
It's really interesting. Coming up in school, in high school, I hated math. Okay. Yes, I'm a CPA and I actually hated math. I was terrible at the algebra and the trigonometry and all the math, in high school. But one of the courses that I took as a junior was at the time it was called record keeping, course. And this gentleman was a CPA. He had his own firm. And I loved that class. And by the end of that, my junior year, I had decided I want to be a CPA and I'm going to do exactly what he's doing. I mean, it was then, and I just kind of had made that decision. I majored in accounting. I got my degree in accounting, and the goal was always to go for the CPA. And so I decided at a very, young age, some people would say, but yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I have the same story actually. Taking a class my junior year and then going, I love this. We had to do a whole entire set of books for the year from source documents on paper with a paper ledger, the whole 9 yards, right?
The green paper with the lines.
Yes, and
the old school.
And I fudged a number in like the October of the year and had to erase my pencil and go back to fix my numbers, going back and back. And I was so mad that I had to go back and fix all the numbers and redo the whole semester worth of work, basically, of all the because it was all in pencil. And I'm like, God, do I love
Exactly.
Excel and ChatGPT now?
Oh my gosh, exactly,
And
man.
QuickBooks, right?
And
QuickBooks is
QuickBooks.
now, yeah. And so I totally see why you have a passion for teaching and a passion for helping small business owners kind of learn the way you did. You and I both learned it very young. And I think that's also why we love teaching it, because
Yeah,
we learned it when we spoke the language of a 15, 16-year-old. So we teach it like
exactly.
somebody is a teenager or a younger kid who's learning it, because that's how we learned it, because it was simplified to our level then. And I think
Absolutely.
just like a language, when you introduce it later in life, it's harder to learn because you have a lot of ground to make up. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
and that's where
absolutely.
that comes from for sure. So on the subject of QuickBooks, so there's a few different people listening based on everyone I've spoken with. One
Mhm.
is, I'm just going to hire it out, not my problem. What type of
Right.
check do I have to write to make this problem go away, people, right? But
Yeah.
and side note, I'm usually one of those people. But here's the thing, there's a lot of folks listening who go, I understand that books are a thing I need to do. I don't
Right.
really understand how to do it. I don't really know what all is expected of me to do it, right? Because
Hmm.
we think bookkeeping is just like keeping a spreadsheet of income and expenses. And I want
Right.
to debunk that myth right now. Like, what is keeping your books as a small business owner, and what should it include?
Yeah, I mean, keeping your books basically involves keeping track of all of your financial transactions, right? That's taking place for your business. And, to do that properly, using an accounting software like QuickBooks is really just going to be the best bet because it's the most
Agreed.
efficient, it's the most effective, and it's going to spit out those reports at the end of the year that your tax preparer needs to create that tax return, and you can't get that from an Excel spreadsheet. You can't get that from a box of receipts. Okay.
Right.
And so that's the bottom line, is just keeping track of all your finances and doing it in a very effective and efficient manner. One of the first things I do with my clients is I require that we automate things. And so one of the things that we do is connect all their bank and credit card accounts to QuickBooks. Okay. No one's manually sitting at the computer typing these things in. That's not necessary. And so that's one of the things that we do to automate that process. And then, because at the end of the day, the business owners who are doing their books, they don't want to do the books, but they need to do the books. And so I always want to show them how to do it in an effective and efficient manner so they can get back to what they actually love doing. And so that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Um,
totally
yeah.
agree. Totally agree.
Mhm.
And so you mentioned that QuickBooks is, for me, the preferred solution as well. I think when a software can do it for you and save you time, it's always the better bet. But let's talk about maintaining it, because what a lot of people do is, number one, they think bookkeeping is the gateway to taxes, right? So like, I only do my books so that we can do my taxes, number one. And number
Right.
two is,
Right.
because of that, we do all the books for the whole year in January,
In January.
right? Let's talk
I
about
call
that.
that the mad dash to tax time.
Yep. How can business owners avoid this pile of bank statements and tears on their bedroom floor every
Yeah.
winter and spring? Like, let's talk about that, because I think that's
Yeah.
something that a lot of people find themselves in because they're not doing it throughout the year.
Right.
And it's because they just don't make it a habit. So do you have any tips for those
Exactly.
listening on how to kind of spread that out and make it a little bit easier to manage?
Yes. So that's one of the things that as soon as the books are set up properly for the business owner, we go through the process of deciding when they can work on the books or what makes sense. So ideally, my recommendation is on a weekly basis. You go into QuickBooks and there's an area called banking. You go in and review your transactions that have downloaded and categorize those things. What you'll find is QuickBooks has a lot of what they call artificial intelligence and that kind of thing, where it kind of learns how to categorize your financial transactions for you after you've done it for a couple of months. So literally you get to a point where you're literally just reviewing transactions and then clicking a button that says, yep, record this on my books. And so my clients are in their books weekly at a minimum. Some of them, if they have a lot of transactions, daily may even be more appropriate. And so if you're staying on top of your books, or you're going in there and you're setting aside. I mean, for me, I don't know about you, but I actually have to put the time on my calendar, just block it out. And that's what
Yeah.
I recommend. Block the
Yeah.
time out on your calendar, even if it's early Saturday morning. That tends to be kind of my day, because it's not a weekday where I see clients or anything. I get up early, and my first couple hours on Saturday morning with my cup of joe is going through and doing my bookkeeping tasks. And
Yeah.
so what's nice about that is it's maintained every month, up to date. And then the first Saturday of every month, I reconcile my books, which means making sure what's in QuickBooks matches your bank statement. And guess what? I print out my profit and loss statement and my balance sheet, and I actually look at it to see, how did I do last month? Not how do I think I did? What do the numbers show? And when you do that, it helps you to make good business decisions. For example, you might be spending a lot of money in one area, and you may need to cut back, or you need to look into why you're spending so much money. I don't know, maybe in office supplies. Like, hey, office supplies was only $500 last month. Now it's double. Why? What did we purchase? And it's those types of decisions that really help to improve that bottom line for business owners.
Yeah. And for those of you listening who are like, daily, oh man, I don't know if I can handle it. So here's what I want you guys to understand, that every month you have a certain number of transactions, right? So for me, I have like 50 transactions a month, and a lot of them are handled by what we call rules in QuickBooks.
Exactly.
So rules are like, it learns the behavior, and it learns that this is always this. And if it's from Staples, it's always office supplies. So it's assumptions that it can make, right? So we call those rules. So that makes it a lot easier. But the other thing is, I only have like 50 transactions a month. So I do this monthly, because it will take me 15 minutes a month, to do. But if you have like, 300 transactions a month, right? What is easier? Right. 300 in one sitting, that's overwhelming. And that's what makes you guys delay it and go, I don't want to do it, because it starts to accumulate into a snowball. But what Crystalynn is saying is, well, what if it was just like 10 a day or 5 a day that you were looking at, and that you could be like, click, 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 click. It would be 2 minutes a day as opposed to like an hour a month. So that's what we're trying to say is, we're not saying to do this daily for an hour, daily for a minute. It's so that way it becomes less of an effort and more of just this steady habit of something you check on in the morning, like your email, just checking on it and doing it, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And then what happens is, when you get to the end of the year, or you get to January, and it's time to hand your books over to the tax person, you're probably just in need of looking at 1 month or maybe 1 week worth of data, and then your books are ready to pass on to the tax person. You're not waiting till, April.
And let's talk about that for a second too, because when you cascade all this stuff, so big complaint I see from business owners is, okay, my accountant can't get around to doing my return. We're going to have to extend because they're so busy in April and March, right?
Yep.
But if your books are done, this is the main delay, by the way, is if your books are done come like the second week of January, now you can hand that over to the accountant, and they can really just finish your return in February after you get all your other documents. So what you're doing is you're setting the tone of how fast things can get done by how fast the books are done. This is usually the first domino that gets pushed in tax season is, are the books done for the business? And you could either sign yourself up for a 10-month tax season or a 2-month tax season by this one factor.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, because basically you set the tone, and believe it or not, the tax folks aren't that busy in January and February, and that's why they are able to get to your books. But by March and April, you're right. It's like, you're going to get extended.
You're trying to buy a Tickle Me Mo on Christmas Eve. Like, sorry.
Good luck with that.
Like that's just that ages me, by the way. Like. But that's exactly it. Like, you have to know where you're at in the priority line. And if you can sneak in early, right, you get in early on tax time, you're going to have such a seamless experience that's free of stress. So let's say, okay, somebody listening is saying, okay, I'm getting this, like, I'm committed. What if I could spend 2 minutes a day on this? I could try this, or maybe, a half hour to an hour a week. This doesn't seem that bad, right? But a lot of people are overwhelmed by what to do in QuickBooks, and you mentioned the banking screen. I think there are
Mm-hmm.
two screens, banking and reports, right? Depending on what features you're using. That's really all you need, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Banking and reports, the chart of accounts, obviously, that's important.
Yeah, let's talk about
Um,
that actually. Let's talk about that. So chart of accounts,
mhm.
another lovely term
Another.
nobody freaking understands what that is. Let's talk about that for a
Right.
second. What is a chart of accounts to you?
Yeah, chart of accounts is just basically a way to categorize financial transactions for a business. And so in QuickBooks, they're called categories. And it just simply means how do you want this transaction to appear on your financial statements? And the example you gave earlier about purchasing office supplies would be something that would be on the chart of accounts as an expense, because that's the type of account it is. So we're just referring to how do these day-to-day business transactions appear on your financial reports? That's what the chart
Right.
of accounts determines, basically. Mm-hmm.
Right. The analogy I use is if all of your transactions are invoices, receipts, and pieces of paper. If we go back to let's just go back to 1992 for a second, and all of these things were pieces of paper,
Right.
then all these things are called accounts. These accounts are binders on a
Mm-hmm.
bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
And the chart of accounts is the bookshelf. The chart of
Yeah.
accounts is where all of that is stored, but then you get to label
Mm-hmm.
those binders. You get to
Right.
label, what are those called? How do I want to organize this, right? You get to clean up the books by customizing your chart of accounts to what your industry is, and you label it, right? A lot of people
Right.
use the default setting and they try to cram into this default. And QuickBooks, guys, assumes you're like a manufacturing company.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of digital business owners are so confused by QuickBooks because they just don't fit into the default setting. I don't think
Yeah.
people realize how customizable it is.
Yeah, and the other thing that people don't realize too is QuickBooks, especially QuickBooks Online, you select your industry and it does attempt to tailor your chart of accounts to your industry. But
Right.
at the end of the day, you are going to have to go in and remove accounts that you have no interest in using and will never use. And then you're going to have to add accounts that make more sense for your business. And that's something that someone has to teach you how to do. And that's what I teach my clients, how to do
Exactly.
these things properly, when to add an account, when not to add an account, right? Because sometimes you can overdo it.
Seen that.
So, yeah. So the more accounts you have, the more you have to manage. So, but yeah, definitely.
Do you have any other tips though on the chart of accounts? Like, well, I know somebody is out there asking, well, how many is too many, right? And of course it depends, but the level of detail you have, do you have any tips on how to manage that and find the right kind of level of detail?
I always like to use the tax return that a person is filing. So if
Yes.
you're a sole proprietor and you file a Schedule C, then make sure you have a category or an account on your chart of accounts for all the buckets that are listed on the Schedule C, because it makes it so much easier, especially if you're trying to do your taxes on your own, to complete that Schedule C form if your chart of accounts is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I always recommend that you start there. And, I think it just makes it a lot easier for both you and the tax professional.
And tell me if you have this too, but I have this rule where I go, nothing that says other, miscellaneous, or uncategorized.
Absolutely not. Or ask my accountant, right?
Mm-hmm.
That one drives me crazy because people actually use that account. So that's one of the accounts that QuickBooks used to automatically put on the chart of accounts. And I used to say, nope, we're not doing that.
We do it for our clients, by the way. Anyone in my clients listening, we use it as the ask the client account, like to what we need what we're not sure about that we're doing, right? If your bookkeeper may use it. Your bookkeeper will use, if you hired somebody, that ask my accountant is key, because that would be the I don't know what to do with this, please help me account. But in general, if you're doing it yourself and you're handing off to your tax preparer, I'll tell you, I've seen it. I get a set of financial statements and there is a massive balance in ask my accountant, which just kind of is like the shrug emoji. Like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm going, I need help here. I need to figure out what this is. Right. Yeah. And this will help speed along the process with the taxes too, guys. If you have more specificity to what it is that these accounts are, other miscellaneous and other stuff. I just don't, it's not an audit red flag necessarily, because I don't really believe there are a ton of audit red flags, but I'll tell you, if you got picked for audit, 100% anything in other, miscellaneous, any of that
Yeah.
is going to get picked for review because they're going to ask you what that is.
Yeah, I would say also, I'm not a fan of miscellaneous or other, but what I will say is if you're going to use a miscellaneous account, you need to set a dollar amount and
Yes.
say nothing more than, $100 or $25 or whatever makes sense for your company goes into this. And then when you do put something in there, you have to put a detailed description so that when a report is generated, you know exactly what that is instead of trying to figure it out. So,
Totally agree. Yeah. It can't be significant in there. So, okay. So we gone through the chart of accounts, and this also dictates your reports too, guys. So if you want to see,
yep.
you want to see different categories of your income. I can't tell you how many people use sales to dump everything in,
I know.
but you have this
Yeah.
option available to you that people don't use. And
Yeah.
it makes my heart break because I'm like, you have this opportunity in front of you to do. I mean, I probably have way too many income accounts, but I have like my CFO income, my tax income,
hmm
podcast income. So,
Right.
and maybe you're a coach, coaching income. Maybe you have a
Yep.
product, it's product income. Maybe it's types of products or sources of revenue, right? So it might be your brick and mortar income versus your Shopify income. You can
hmm
see that breakout. And that's part
Yeah.
of the insights you were talking about is consuming those reports in a way that works well for you, but then
Yeah.
designing your QuickBooks to feed that, right? That I think that
Exactly.
helps people review their reports a little bit more
Yeah.
consciously and look forward to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. You definitely have to take advantage of customizing that chart of accounts because what you're going to start to find is you want to know, okay, what source of income is generating the most money for me? So just like you said, I have coaching income. I have income from my course. I
Mm-hmm.
have teaching and training workshops income. And I want to know that breakdown because I, want to know what sources are bringing in the most money. And
Right.
so absolutely, I totally agree with that.
What are are there any other mistakes or like hiccups or potholes along the way with QuickBooks that you've seen a lot of business owners make that they can easily avoid?
Yeah, the number one mistake that I still see over and over again is people have their business and their personal funds commingled. Drives me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it though, because starting out, a lot of business owners figure, what's the point in setting up a separate business account when I'm not making money anyway? And I'm using this money over here. A lot of people start out, even I did, where my business was my side hustle and my 9 to 5, I was using part of my paycheck to pay for those expenses for the side hustle, right?
Right.
And so I get it. I did the same thing, but unfortunately, it's a mistake to do that. Like if you're commingling funds, number one, you need to go to the bank, open up a separate bank account. Okay. And then what you're going to have to start doing is making a withdrawal from your personal account and depositing that money into your business account and labeling it as an owner investment because you need to be keeping track of the money you're putting into your business. At some point, you need to know how much you've invested. You might have an investor that wants to come in or partner with you. And that's one of the questions they're going to ask is how much have you invested in your business? And it's just really important to keep these funds separate. It's a huge red flag with the IRS if you're commingling your personal and business funds. It really
Yeah,
is.
I'll layer on top of that and say, you know, if your business got audited but you were commingling, now they have the ability to ask you to pull all of your personal bank statements and ask questions about
hmm
everything.
Everything.
Oh my gosh.
You don't want to give an auditor that much power.
No. And
Yikes.
it's almost like you're inviting someone into your house to look in one room and then because there's no wall between, now they're looking in 3 rooms and going through all your stuff and it's like
Everything.
get out of my house. That's how my clients feel when that happens and I'm like you
Yeah.
just got to keep the stuff separated. And like you said, it's not easy when you're first starting out, right? You just broke down that like we got to take some money from our personal, put it into the business,
Yeah.
and that is the owner's investment. Now, what I want to emphasize is that action does not trigger any taxes.
Right.
It's not income to your business. You're just filling the cash register to make
Yep.
change. You're putting money you
Exactly.
already have into a different place, and that does not trigger a taxable event, we call it. So there's no
Right.
fear or harm in doing that, like you're going to get taxed on it.
Exactly. Yep. No, that's absolutely correct. And then by the same token, on the expense side, any money that you're spending for your business needs to come out of that bank account, or you need to have a separate credit card. Even if it's a personal credit card, maybe you don't qualify for a business credit card. So what? Qualify for a personal credit card, but only use it for business expenses. Why? Because that is going to be your one source where, if I purchase anything for the business, it's on that credit card statement. And you don't have to go looking on your personal statements and looking all over the place at the end of the year to make sure you account for everything that you bought for the business, right? If you
Right.
don't, streamline that process, you're going to miss out on tax deductions easily,
Yeah.
if you don't streamline it. And the other thing that goes with that is use as little cash as possible to pay for expenses, because if you lose that receipt, you lose that deduction. There's no proof. But if you use a credit card or a debit card, it's always going to be on a statement. So you always have a record of it.
Absolutely true. And
Yeah.
and the same goes, right? If you're spending now, it's this chicken and the egg thing, right? Because you may not even realize you're started a business, but you invested in, I don't know, this happened to me. I invested in a coach who helped me
Hmm.
start my business, and that investment had to come out of my personal pocket. I didn't have anything set up yet because I had no intention of starting a business. I didn't even know
Right.
if I wanted to, but this course, this program helped me discover that I did, right? So
Hmm.
by the end of it, I had everything set up, but I spent several $1,000s to get educated in order to grow that business. So
Yep.
I had to pay that personally. But what that is, you just have to either, this is what I tell people, reimburse
Hmm.
yourself after you have the money,
Hmm.
or depending on what year it is, or you can just put it into your books. You can get that into your books by entering some stuff in QuickBooks, which is now like intermediate level stuff, but
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
show that that money was spent on business stuff. So you don't not get the deduction just
Yeah.
because you used a personal account. That's not what we're saying, right?
Exactly. That is not what we're saying at all. Because in the beginning, like I said, I had one account as well. And at the end of the year, I would use something that's called a journal entry, which just
Mm-hmm.
simply means making an adjustment to your books. And I had the totals that I needed to make the adjustment so that I could get my tax deduction. Absolutely. Yep.
Yep, because you want your books to be accurate with what you did. And you
Hmm.
don't miss out on the deduction because you used a different form of payment. That doesn't
Right.
disqualify you from your deductions, but it does make it
Right.
a little bit harder to find them. So when Crystalynn is saying you're missing out on deductions, it's only because they're falling through the seat, right? They're like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I
Exactly.
missed it and I forgot that I had that receipt. And you just don't want to miss those opportunities.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
So when we talk about learning QuickBooks, I always say that there are two options when it comes to your bookkeeping as a new business owner. Number
Hmm.
one, hire someone to do it for you and invest in a person, invest in a professional,
Hmm.
or invest in training yourself.
Yeah.
There is no third
Absolutely.
option. There is
Agreed.
there is no third
Agreed.
option. Even if you're just doing the basics for yourself, it's better than nothing, and it makes significant progress. What have you seen, or what have you advised business owners who are starting out, where to get started with QuickBooks? Because I do believe it's very overwhelming for a new person, someone who's not even, maybe they're not business savvy, like you were with math. You said you hated
Hmm.
math. This is how most people
Right.
feel about what we do. They're
Right.
overwhelmed and they're like, I know I need QuickBooks, but I have no idea where to start. Where do you start with them, and how do you simplify it for them?
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why I offer an initial consultation that's complimentary, because I want to find out where the business owner, where they've been, where they currently are, so that we can develop a plan that makes sense for them. And so if you're not sure what to do, you don't know where to get started, book a complimentary consultation and I can help you figure it out. But at the end of the day, if you're planning to manage your own books, as you mentioned, you need to be educated. And so I actually have a self-paced course that I designed for people who want to do their own books, but they have no accounting, no bookkeeping, no numbers background at all. So I'm teaching you how to use QuickBooks Online. It's literally a plug and play where you're watching a video and you can mimic what I did in your own QuickBooks to get it set up and get it done. And it actually is a great companion for my book, Mastering QuickBooks 2023. So I recommend, again, education to get going. The nice thing is you can log into my course at midnight if that's when you have free time to do it. If you're like, I'm probably not going to do that because I'm not very motivated, then I set you up with several coaching sessions. And so we do it live, like you and I are over remote. And so you share your desktop with me and I talk my clients through, here's what you need to do. And so, yeah, definitely. And then the other option, like you said, is hire someone to do it for you. I do that as well. But when you hire me to manage your books, we're going to set up a monthly meeting where we go over your reports so you know what's happening in your business. It's still, even if you hire someone, you need to know what's happening in your business. You can't just say, oh, that's that person's responsibility, but it's your business. And if you don't take that ownership, that's when you see all these stories about bookkeepers, stealing from people that they've been managing their books because the business owner literally has no idea what's happening.
Yes. And it doesn't mean you have to become really savvy or become an accountant. There is an in-between here, guys, where we're just asking you not to turn a blind eye, hand over the keys, and then jump in the trunk and shut the door, right? It's like, you drive this thing and just tell me where we end up. And it's like, no, this is your journey. This is your mission. This is your business. I'm not going to take the keys away from you, but I am going to sit in the front seat and tell you about the potholes coming up.
Yep.
Right. So that's the idea, is that you have somebody by your side who's a professional who can advise you, but you would still take ownership and accountability of your business, which is really important. And I think that a lot of newer business owners, again, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by all this stuff. I totally get it. Yeah. For me, it's tech. For me, it was like getting my podcast station set up with cameras and lights and things. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. If I hit the wrong button, it's all going to go to shit. And I'm like scared.
Exactly.
And I'm like, this is how business owners feel with their books. And I totally understand. But at the same time, there is an ownership and responsibility of this stuff. And I think that given that this episode, we're airing this episode right now in about Q3 of 2023 or Q4 of 2023. Yeah. I forget what month October is in. There you go. We're in Q4. And a lot of business owners are going, yeah, I haven't updated my book since February. I haven't even done anything this year so far. This is a lot of heavy lifting. I'm not doing this daily habit. I'm not doing it weekly. And I have 10 months to do. What do you recommend for those listening who feel like they're a little bit behind? What are the ways that they can kind of get unstuck in this area of their books for 2023?
Yeah, so it's never too late, right? And October is better than waiting until January. And so basically what I recommend is you reach out and again for help. So if it's a case where you need a cleanup, which is what I would call someone who hasn't touched their books all year or haven't touched their books in several months. And so you hire someone like me, they do a cleanup, get you caught up to date through October, and then they can teach you how to start managing it on a regular basis. So again, I know it's overwhelming to be like, I have 10 months to clean up and I don't want to deal with it at all. And then if you're the type where, no, I'm just going to pay somebody to keep track of it, then great. Again, reach out now. Don't wait till tax season, because I'm a CPA, but I don't do taxes. And it's because I'm too busy helping people get their books ready for the tax person. And trust and believe, it's hard to get on my calendar January through April because I'm just as busy as tax professionals. And so that's why I say don't wait, because it's just people like me are just really, really, overwhelmed by them. But it's never too late, reach out to get help. You're not expected to know bookkeeping, just like someone like me. I can't stand marketing. And I have a marketing manager that does all that stuff. We go over what she's going to do, and I might, tweak things here and there, but that's her baby and she's got it. Yeah. And I'm glad, because I want to stick to the bookkeeping, which is what I love doing. So
exactly. And, and I think we have to surrender to the experts a little bit and look at the value of our time.
Yeah.
And the value of your time is so crucial, because as a business owner, every hour matters, because every hour is worth something in terms of income producing time, especially if you're a service provider, because your time is kind of your your way of giving to your customers, right? So
Right.
even if you may not bill by your time, every hour you're spending doing this as opposed to something else, you could be limiting your earning potential. And
Yeah.
you could technically on an hourly basis pay somebody,
Mm-hmm.
less than you make per hour, and you win. And that's the whole
Right.
idea, is that you're going to be outsourcing out to the experts who will get it done, probably as good, if not better than you do,
Yeah.
and get it done faster.
Yep.
And then you'll be able to consume the data to make better decisions. That's the win-win. And
Yeah.
is it ever too early for someone to invest in a bookkeeper or to get on QuickBooks Online? Because I hear a lot of people saying, well, I'm just in a spreadsheet now because I only do this, this, and this. And, I'm
Yeah.
not ready for that yet. What would you say to them?
Yeah, people, that's the thing. That's actually the ideal time to get into QuickBooks because things are slow and very manageable. And so because you're building, it's the ideal time because you have more time now than you will once your business starts to grow to learn how to use the software properly. And then if you decide to hand it off, you already know what's going on, right? Because you've been there doing it for however long while things were slow. So I say as soon as you can get into a QuickBooks product or accounting software, do it and just start with, the cheapest one. Because if you're just starting out, you're not needing the most expensive product. And the other thing that I love about QuickBooks Online is if you need help, what's included in your monthly fee is tech support by phone or by chat. And so that's the other thing is if you do get stuck, it's not like, oh, I got to pay somebody to help me get unstuck. No, if you're subscribing to a product like QuickBooks Online, tech support's included, no extra cost. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Phenomenal. Right. So there's really no reason not to try it, especially because I think they even
exactly.
do a free trial when you first start. So you can actually play
Hmm.
around with it and see if it works well for you. And I
Absolutely.
think the ultimate combination, guys, is if you're starting a business or if you're starting your books for the first time, it's okay. Maybe you've had a business for a couple of years and you're like, you know what? I got to kind of, grow up a little bit. And I was going to say, layering onto yours, I think
Hmm.
people who stay in the spreadsheets, I go, I want you to behave as the business you're becoming, not the
Right.
business you are now. And
Exactly.
the sooner
Yeah.
that you can set yourself up for, set up the machine, set up the systems for 1 million to come in instead of
That's
just
right.
$1, right?
Hmm.
Set up the systems now so that you're welcoming that in so that when it does hit, which will happen, and you may not know it's coming, it will hit.
Right.
And then I don't want you scrambling going, oh, I need to go get a separate bank account because I just made this much money. No, no, no. There's no dollar threshold, but you do want to have it before that happens. And the problem is you
Right.
don't know when that's going to happen. So,
Exactly. You
so the
don't.
best time is yesterday. Next best time is now.
Yep.
And I think that's great advice. So the ultimate combination, guys, let's just recap, Crystalynn, make sure I got this right, is first thing, set up a separate business bank account. I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah.
Then it's plug that thing into QuickBooks Online,
Hmm.
play
Yep.
around with it, get used to it, learn it a little bit with a few transactions, maybe a dozen, right? And then just
Hmm.
starting to learn it. And obviously utilize Crystalynn's resources. So let's just go through that one more time. You have a course and you have the ability to help people with coaching. So could you let people know where they can find out more about that?
Yes. So if you go to crystallynshelton.com/podcast with an S at the end, that page has links to book a complimentary coaching session with me so we can dive into what your situation is and create a plan together. I also have a link on there to purchase my online course. If you are more of, oh, I'm gonna do it yourself, let me learn how to use QuickBooks. I have the link to that course. The beauty of my course also, which differentiates it from several others, is you don't just buy the course and you're on your own. You purchase the course and then you also get access to a private community where you can actually post your questions as you're going through the course. If you run into an issue or you have a question, post your question to the community and myself or another QuickBooks Pro will respond within 24 hours. And then I do a monthly Ask Me Anything, again, for people who are taking the course. And so we support you every step of the way because I want you to become proficient in QuickBooks, or at least understand it enough to where if you hire someone, you know what they're doing. And so, yeah, go to that page for that. And then the other thing I have there is a download. It's a free download. It's called Your First 7 Days in QuickBooks. So it's a checklist that will take you to a YouTube series. And so it's a video for each, it's like 7 steps. So if you have QuickBooks, what do you do the first week? And so that's what that download will help you with.
Amazing. So grab all those resources, guys, and, give yourself an early Christmas present for your business, which, by the way, all of this is a business deduction because you are learning skills that will help enhance your ability to run your business. So all of these are deductible expenses, in my opinion, on your books. And take advantage of this and give yourself an early Christmas present to get this done before the end of the year. Your future self will thank you. Crystalynn, thank you so much for joining me on the show today and sharing all your knowledge with those listening.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It was my pleasure.